bit showery, yeah. Hi, everybody. So welcome. We're going to get started in respect to those of you who've come on time. We might have a few more people join and we can let them in as they do. So welcome to this Sentinel briefing. I'm Georgina Craig. Some of you, I think most of you, I've interacted with one way or another quite recently. And I'm working today with Jason from NHS England, who is going to give us some update about some of the issues that have been causing us to pause over the last little while in the Sentinel programme, and just share with you where we've got to. So if we go through what we're going to do today, so we're starting off by doing a little bit of context setting. You've all started to introduce yourselves in the chat, and do carry on if you haven't already, just saying who you are. And then we're going to look at the context. So just share for you a little bit about how the programme came into being, and also reminding ourselves, because it's really important to celebrate how far we've come in a very, very short period of time, what we've actually been doing, and why we've been doing it the way we have. Then we'll talk, I'll hand over to Jason and he'll talk about the reasons for the Sentinel pause. Then we'll talk about the principles for re-engagement. So, and that it sets out some very clear actions for you to take to get moving again. And we'll also share some detail about the training, support and the updated toolkit that you'll all have access to. Okay, and then we'll end with a Q&A session. So if we could start off with the context setting. So I thought it would be very helpful to just share with you sort of the journey that we've taken to get to where we are, and also where we're going to be going. So we had Redmore and ELC had already started talking to NHS England about the idea of group clinics delivered via video in January of this year, and we'd agreed to do a lovely slow-paced co-design program with patients and clinicians, and doing loads of evaluation and really getting to grips with how to do video group clinics really well. And then on the 12th of March, COVID kind of appeared, or well, in our line of sight in any case. And it became very clear that whilst that program would have been really nice to spend the time really digging deep and taking our time to develop this new innovation, which is, by the way, an innovation that has not been tried or tested anywhere in England really up until this point, we decided that we would scale up this approach and very quickly get going with video group clinics as a potential way to actually help general practice cope with COVID. So that meant that between the 12th of March and the 6th of April, we started planning and doing all the background work to get the programme moving. So it was a very quick a way of working. Next slide, please. The programme is itself based on a number of design principles, and these are the ones that still really hold true for us now in this world where we're moving perhaps out of the acute phase around COVID and into more of a recovery phase. So the first one was to build on existing programs and plans. Can I just ask those who've just arrived a little bit later if you could just check whether you've muted yourself, because we're getting a bit of background noise here. So if you can just do a double check on whether you've muted yourselves. And if you are new as well, if you could just pop your email and your practice name in the meeting chat so that we can make sure that we've got a record that someone from your Sentinel has been attended one of these sessions, that'd be really great. So we wanted to build on existing programs and plans. So both myself and Redmore were already doing some work for NHS England and Improvement, and we wanted to build on those programs and make sure that we were really creating lots of synergy. We also wanted to minimise the need for primary care teams to invest in tech. We knew that that could be a barrier, and we didn't want it to be a barrier within this project. And that's why we demonstrate this program using Microsoft Teams, because that is available to most practices at little or very or no cost right now. We also wanted to co-design video group clinics with clinicians and patients, and that's why you as Sentinels are so important to this journey, because you're going to help us to actually understand how this video group clinic model works in practice, where the greatest benefits are offered for you and for your patients, and also to help us to actually identify some of the issues and preempt them rather than find them causing us problems later. And that's really what the pause has been about. When some of those issues started to appear, we realized we had to actually stop and kind of consolidate before moving forward. We also want to create models of video group clinic which are going to maximize community connection. So, you know, we're in a situation where we're all feeling the sort of impact of COVID on our mental well-being, no matter how well we were at the start of this journey. And video group clinics give you a great opportunity to actually work with patients and bring them together and help them feel connected and less alone. And that's a really important part of the sort of legacy that we want to be created by video group clinics. And we have to design that into the way we run video group clinics to make sure that happens. We wanted to simplify the change for primary care. So in the background, we're working really hard on templates and planners, and, you know, we've got a national evaluation so that you don't need to worry so much about some of those things, because we're going to make it easy for you and give you a sort of toolkit that you can just run with. We also want to make sure that you can manage virtual group dynamics really effectively, and the training is for a big chunk of that is about that issue, as you know, as people who've attended the training. And also building continuous improvement and learn as we scale. And again, that's why we've included a Sentinel aspect of this program, and your feedback is going to be absolutely essential to us as we move forward. And finally, this is not just about COVID, it's about building a legacy of skills and a completely new way of working in primary care that will really support primary care resilience into the future. So we've got immediate issues around social distancing, but there are certain groups of people, the housebound, people who work, families who with young children who are very used to, you know, interacting on in a digital way, where group clinics could actually become perhaps almost their preferred way of consulting with us. So it's really exciting. And the phase 1 began, as I said, on the 6th of April, and as you may remember, I certainly remember, we paused on the 7th of May. So when we paused, we had only been going for a month, and by that point we'd already smashed our target, which was originally to recruit 42 Sentinels. We'd recruited 70, and I think it's going to be up to about 72 by the time we get going again. We've got a couple of other practices who've joined as Sentinels, and then into phase 2, which will most likely now be mid-July, where we're going to be building on your work and spreading it as a national training program to any GP practice in the country that wants to participate. And I'm going to hand over to Jason now, because he's going to also before he starts his little section, just share with you how that compares, just so that you've got a little bit of a benchmark with the timelines to develop video consultations, so one-to-one video consultations, just so that you can get a feel for that. So over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Georgina. And it's a real big thank you from the both of us, because your patience has been really well received from our behalf, to give us the time to get things right for yourselves. To give you that real context that Georgina was talking about, the rollout of online consultations as a whole by another team in our organisation, NHS England and NHS Improvement, all in all took 18 months. So you've got to realise that to a certain extent, our kind of move forward at this pace was bound to a certain extent to come across some bumps in the road, which we certainly did find. But we made sure that we actually listened to what you had to say, because more importantly, starting these Sentinels are exactly there to actually provide us with that type of information. So respecting of that, these are the things that really came across as in terms of the reasons for the Sentinels, the Sentinel pause. So over just these few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the areas which caused the pause, but more importantly, how we've solved them, because it was really worth it this time that you've given us to really make sure that, as Georgina was saying, we've been able to consolidate and make sure that this is actually a usable product for you to move forward safely and with everything that you need to know in place. So our pause was centered around the whole idea of some issues that were raised around the clinical area. So in that instance, it was around risk assessments and the indemnity. It was about making sure that who was on the calls was definitely who they were, and that when they were on the calls they were safe, so confirming their identity and location, making sure that patients had a real informed consent, and doing that in the most efficient way, which didn't drag you guys down in terms of adding a burden, but making sure that that was covered off. And then more importantly, the two kind of key areas of confidentiality and privacy, where and this is a fairly unique area where it's got the added risk of having a third party or the patient themselves decide to actually breach that confidence that you've gained, and making sure that the patients themselves have a real understanding of the privacy issues that they're around. So first of all, the clinical areas were centered around risk assessment. Now, the Digital First Primary Care programme did a real good job, really, at making sure that people were aware of the key aspects of what needed to be done before starting any type of online consultation. So in the main, that's the completion of a data protection initial assessment. It's the knowledge and understanding of the risk management standards, and then being able to address those when you're deploying a new system like this, and then understanding the risks and hazards that are around there. So what we've done is gone back and looked at all of those to make sure that you can get a fast start. So we'll be providing for your start a template. Data protection initial assessment, which is tailored to you doing video group clinics. You'll need to add in your own information about the systems that you use, but in the main, it's ready and waiting to be used. The risk management standards are fairly complex, and we've worked with the CSU to bring together again a template that can help you address that. Again, they're specific to the systems that you're using within your practice, but again, these templates will help. NHS Digital have extended their if you like, scope of doing both of these, and saying that under current conditions, you can delay completing both of these operations for up to 6 months from you starting the operation. But that's not to say that, of course, having a good working knowledge of both of these areas is really important. Looking at both of the templates that come through will give you that in the first instance, and then you can approach both of these over a longer period of time. Again, a good working knowledge of the hazards and risks will be there in a hazard and risk log template for you to have a look at and understand how those have been mitigated with the various different elements. The second big area was that it was raised to us that there were some concerns about indemnity cover. So we approached both NHS Resolution and a number, well, all, because there's only 3 medical defence organisations out there. And NHS Resolutions have confirmed that as a clinical practice, video group clinics are covered within the CNSGP, the Clinical Negligence Scheme for General Practice. And the MDOs themselves are happy to cover, again, as a medical practice, as long as you have access during the session to the medical records and you've confirmed consent and confidentiality. What we're also saying is that we'll provide the provision of a central statement, because we are slightly seeing is that local offices to the MDOs are giving slightly different bits of information or requiring other bits of information. So we'll be providing you with a central statement and a checklist for the conversation that you do need to have with your MDOs before you start. That conversation is mainly based around the fact of the scope and type of delivery that you're intending to do. So the types of clinics that you want to do. So always good to keep that open dialogue with the MDOs, and we'll be remaining to do that communications with them and offering everything we offer you, we'll be offering to them and NHS Resolutions at the same time. The one key element, however, that's been throughout both the NHS Resolutions response and the Medical Defence Organisation's response is that they do not cover for third-party breaches. So that's, as a key instance, if a patient or a third party attending a video group clinic decides to record it and then share it on, for example, social media. At present, they don't cover that, and it's something that what we're advising now is for you to consider your own insurances, whether they have that type of insurance in there, or if not, extend it with the necessary data and cyber insurance. These aren't very expensive, and we'll be offering some advice as we get closer to you starting. So the next couple of areas is about that confirmation of identity and location. Why do we need to do this? Well, in the end, because we are dealing with the cyber world to a certain extent, there is that risk of hacking, and the person that you're speaking to isn't necessarily who was the intended person to be there. So we just need to do some basic checks. And on booking of a session, we'll be collecting some information about the patient, so their telephone number they're proposing to be on and their location where they're proposing to be during the video group clinic. And then later on, at the beginning of every session, video group clinic session, we'll be collecting that information in a partial sense. So, for example, please tell me the last 4 figures of your the telephone number you're ringing from and the last 3 figures of the postcode where you are at. Again, why are we doing this? If the patients themselves need help at that particular time, then there is the facility for you to be able to then contact them directly where they are. So again, we're collecting this for the safety of the patients and more importantly, the safety of yourself if something happens during a session. So the next section was around informed consent. And this has been up to bit, as we said, we knew that consent needed to be gained, but I think what needs to be made very clear is that needs to be informed now. How do you do that information? Well, it's through a number of guides that we're going to provide. So some narrative to send to the patient, some information about the information you're proposing to share. So, for example, if the session includes test results, what type of test results, and some personal privacy advice about the systems that you're doing. Again, we'll be providing you with some platform advice, and you can always go back to your own IT providers or the people who provide the systems that you're using to give you some of that help and support around that particular area. And a patient's agreement now to really stick to that confidentiality that we're looking for. Again, those provide the main informed consent area. We're also running, by collecting this information, a 3-part consent principle. So by accepting the invitation to a video group clinic, that's implied. So they are very much saying that they understand the confidentiality and the consent to share that information. You're doing it at the beginning of every session verbally, and then you are then also recording that on a session record. that they are who they say they are, and their confidentiality and consent has been confirmed. So again, that's really that three-part gives you that confidence that that informed consent has been gained. And then finally, around the confidentiality and privacy. So again, confidentiality is really important, and that agreement that they're signing up to, indirectly, we're not asking now for them to actually return that confidentiality agreement, but to read it as part of the invite, to understand how that works, and that's reiterated at the beginning of every video group clinic. And then come back to us with at the beginning of that session that they understand that. The planners that were in place at the beginning and will be covered underneath the training also make sure that you're clear on the information that you're proposing to share, and you stay within that bubble. So if there is any other information to be shared, first of all, you're agreeing it with the group that you want to share that and everybody's okay with that. But in the main, beforehand and up front, so no mistakes can be made, planners can be used to make sure that that information is shared in a reasonable fashion. So the last area is about privacy, and this is really important to people, and it certainly came up on a number of occasions, and the platforms themselves have quite a few unique aspects to that. So it's really important that during your implementation phase, where you're planning to introduce these, that you think about the elements of privacy that need to be covered by the patients themselves. So making sure that they understand how the system works, and if there's any specific information about privacy settings that they need to undertake. Again, we'll provide some help and support around these, and you can use a combination of technologies to make sure that privacy is maintained, and that you're reducing the risk of breach occurring. We've been working with Redmore over the last month or so to build on a platform guide, and within there there'll be some information there about how to use a combination of technologies to reduce some of the risks of breach that we're talking about. So that's our main areas, and although it sounds in a number of occasions fairly complex, we understand that some of these things need to be considered once, and once that's done and kind of ticked off in your kind of overall checklist, then that's really covered off and will allow you to move forward with these on a much more regular and easy basis. We've produced a flow chart that can take you through these particular steps and make sure if you run through that flow chart, then in the end you'll have covered off some of the aspects that have been raised as issues. So I think we absolutely remain positive that video group clinics is going to be a really useful addition to primary care. So again, I reiterate, thank you for your patience, and from our aspects, we're just really looking forward to moving forward with you on this project. I can only reiterate again what Georgina said in terms of how important you are as the Sentinels. During the period that you're going to try this out, feedback to us anything, and something that Georgina says in one of the later slides is tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we need to know all of those things to make it work for everybody. Thanks, and I'll hand you back to Georgina now for the principles of where we're going to re-engage with you. I think you bobbed on mute there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's it.
Good. Okay. So what I wanted to do is make it nice and easy for you to think about what you need to do now to get going again. And you can get going again from now. Next week, we will be sending you out, sorry, the week after, we'll be sending you out the revised templates and things like that, but there's you've got plenty that you can get going with now to get yourself set up. So the first thing is to just recognize that in basically just over a month of actually being having this program going live, just recognize how far we've come. As Jason said, it's taken 18 months for the video consultations program to get to the same stage. So be really proud of yourselves of what we've actually done already. Be really clear on your ambition for video group clinics. So really start with the end in mind. Think about, when we first started talking about this, we were talking mainly about COVID, and we were very much in our sort of COVID world. Now we are starting to raise our heads up and start to think beyond COVID, looking at recovery, thinking about resilience in general practice. Think about staff who you are thinking that you might possibly lose because they want to go into more flexible working arrangements. How can you use video group clinics as a tool to help you to improve care and also to develop and retain and motivate your workforce? It's really important that you have a clinical lead who's going to own some of these information governance and risk management processes. That might not be you as the person who's the lead for the Sentinel. If you already have a clinical lead, which I'm sure you will do, who's looking at stuff around information governance and risk management, then let that person be the lead for this as well. And maybe they need to attend the training so that they can really understand what it's all about, and then make sure that all of this stuff is put in place for you. Also, have a look at that top-up insurance. As Jason said, it isn't terribly expensive. If anyone needs sort of some details of that quite quickly, then just pop me an email and we'll make sure that you've got the latest information so you can look into that fairly quickly. We don't want you to retrain the staff who've already been trained, although anyone who wants to attend the training again is very welcome. It's not a problem at all. They can come along. We've got some people who've attended the training more than once and they found it very useful. So if you want people to attend as a refresher, that's no problem whatsoever. You've got 4 weeks now of Sentinel only training, so there's going to be no problem with you guys getting trained. The dates are already on NHS events, and we've included a link to that in a little moment, which takes you directly to that site. Also, make full use of this exclusive training program. So really make sure that you get as many people as possible trained. We're going to have at least 2 training sessions. Well, we've got 2 training sessions a week. So, and you've got some good notice about it. So make sure that you make full use of that. And once we move to the national training, of course, Sentinels can continue to send people to the national training. So you've got, training on tap for you over the next little while. Do look to update your consent, confidentiality and IG processes in line with the toolkit when we send the new toolkit out to you, and make sure your staff are briefed on those processes. They are subtly different from what we've talked about before, but we've already taught you in your training about the idea of a 3-part consent process, for instance. So some of it is just about wording and nuancing. Do reflect and feedback to us as much as possible. This program is absolutely about continuous improvement, and we've already learned so much from you, and we need to keep learning together. And I would like to set up a Sentinel WhatsApp group. So if you could possibly text me, one person from each practice. This is my number there. Your name, your practice name, and your CCG or STP. Then I will add you to that WhatsApp group, and that WhatsApp group will become one of the main ways in which we keep in contact with you as Sentinels, and you will also be able to keep in contact with each other. And then finally, we really will be looking for you to work with us on case studies. So I know at least a couple of people on the call today have already run video group clinics before we kind of pause the program. And we really want to turn those into case studies, because it's going to really help with the national training, and the stories that you have to tell and your experiences are going to be the most powerful driver for your colleagues to take this up. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a plan. If I could have the next slide, please. So very, very practical. Basically, the 3 things you need right now in terms of contacts. We need you to know that this is how you can book those Sentinel trainings. That link will take you straight to the Sentinel training site. have that in your mind to look out for the updated toolkit week beginning the 22nd of June, and make sure that whoever's going to be the lead for some of those governance issues has a little bit of time that week to get that all sorted. And then reach out for any technical help and support, and that would include things like, you know, how do I overcome this negative side of my platform that I want to use around privacy and all that kind of thing, to Redmore on that email. Or if it's more about practice development advice and support, then pop an email to ELC. As Jason said, your feedback is really critical, and we don't just want to hear the good news stories. We often, it's from the failures, from the sort of dark moments, that we learn the most. So share everything with us. We are here, a listening ear for you, to share your good and challenging moments. And then the other thing that might happen, and we want to encourage you to do this, in fact, is that people might say, oh, you're a Sentinel, how do I get involved in this VGC training? You know, we don't want you to share the details of the Sentinel training. That is just for you. But there will be national training starting, and it probably will be in mid-July. And how we're dealing with that right now is asking those people who are interested in national training to express interest in doing that via NHS events. And then everybody will be sent an email to say the national training is now open and you can book yourself in. And we'll do that as soon as possible. So if you could pass on this flyer, which you have received previously in Sentinel briefings, but which we will send out again after today, along with this presentation, to anyone else who, apart from yourselves, so that they can potentially plan to get trained very soon. Okay, so we're going to move on now and just open the floor to questions. So we haven't got masses of Sentinels on the call. So if you've got a question, just unmute and say who you are and ask your question, and then we'll take it from there. Any questions?
Hi, I've got a question. We were looking to start last week, actually, but we're waiting for go ahead and obviously didn't get it. Now, we were going to be using desktops and tablets, but I was under the impression that people could use a smartphone, and when we tried to use it via Teams, we couldn't. Is this only for tablets and only for desktops?
No, I mean, most of the systems that are being recommended by us, and certainly let's use Teams as an example, should be able to work on desktop phones and tablets, so across the various different platforms. It is some of the online consultation systems, so in our platform guide we'll say a little bit more detail on that, are restricted to desktop clients only, but most of the video conferencing systems have been designed specifically to work across all platforms. So if that's the intention that you're going to use something like Teams, it shouldn't be an issue.
I think it was our technical facilitator person was concerned that they would be able to pass off their data. People would be able to gain their data if they used a certain element of Teams.
Yeah, so that probably is to do with if the person already has a Microsoft Teams account as part of their work. So what we need to do is make sure that people come into the Microsoft Teams meeting via the web link and not through their MS Teams app.
Yeah.
If they come in through the MS Teams app on their phone, then their email will be visible to everybody, because it's like MS Teams recognizes you. It's like welcome back, you know, and you get called by so it would be their work email if it's a work MS Teams account or whatever. So there will be guidance to make sure that people know to preserve your privacy, come in via the web link. So that it's not. That is one of the drawbacks with MS Teams. Every system has its drawbacks. Do you know what I mean? None of them are perfect. And so we're working with the kind of best of a, I don't want to say, it sounds negative to say the best of a bad bunch, because obviously it's but there is, you know, what's happened, which I think, you know, we're really excited about, is as a result of this national programme, all of those video consultation providers are now realizing that video group clinics is something that is going to happen. So they're now starting to respond to the questions that we're asking them and think, how do I make my video system fit for video group clinics? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're actually, part of this process is actually about co-designing a better systems with the providers as well.
Yeah.
And we have to give them a little bit of credit and also time, don't we, to get all of it right. But they are quickly responding. I don't know, and I know we've got Anna on the call. Anna, do you want to add anything to that on those systems issues?
Yeah. As you were saying that it's not working on the mobile phone.
Yeah.
Especially with Microsoft Teams, it might be depending on the browser that you're using. So you might need to try it on Google Chrome and copying the link into Google Chrome, the Google Chrome app on your mobile.
Okay, we did, because we tried it on an iPhone and an Android.
Yeah,
and
so on
an
iPhone, the default browser is Safari.
Yeah.
And Microsoft Teams isn't supported on Safari if you're entering a call that way. So it might be that you try it just using Google Chrome.
Okay, that's good. That's a really good tip to know.
Because obviously we want people
to
have a mobile phone, and that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the key things, again, we were saying about the platform privacy advice, and again, there'll be a little bit more detail within the platform guide. If I stick with Teams as an example, logging out of your registered address on the app on your phone, and then following the link, then that actually takes you in as a guest. So you know, you've got that option with the app itself, so you can still use the phone app, because you're quite right. You know, phone use is now predominantly 85% of digital interactions. So yeah, it is possible. It's just that patients need to be given that, for that particular platform that you're using, some specific privacy advice that they need to follow. So all that can be included in your the narrative that you send them as part of the invite. And again, we've done you a template for that as a real big starting point. And then again, hopefully the platform guide and the information you collect about your system's privacy will kind of make it easy for you to do that. So good news there.
We've got a question in the chat, Jason.
Yeah.
With the confidentiality side, can the patient send a private message to the facilitator or the surgery? I'm a bit concerned about telling the last 3 characters of the postcode, because obviously you're in a given location, you know, so the surgery might have the, you know, the locality might be the other 3 digits. And this might not be something that patients are concerned about, but it's, you know, have we thought about that?
Yeah, so there's two sides to it. Again, it's a part of the answer is platform dependent. So on some platforms, you can undertake private conversations with patients while you're on the video group clinic to check that. You can also use mixed technology. So, for example, AQRX is a system that's been adopted by a lot of people who are using System 1 and EMIS medical and clinical record systems as a chain SMS process. So they can text the patient that's going to be on the video group clinic, ask for the detail, and it comes back, obviously, you know, fairly private. We're trying to make things easy for you and make it as consistent as possible. And ironically here, you know, some of these manual processes of bringing people on to that session and asking them to give us partial information. So hence why, for example, postcode, we've said the back half of the postcode, because that front half gives you the kind of basic location of where people are. The back half is a bit mixed. People don't normally know the back half. There can be thousands of combinations at the other end. But saying that, you could reduce it down to tell me the first and the last part of the postcode. Again, the same with the telephone number. It could be, you know, the middle 4 or the end 4, etc. The reason why we're doing this is twofold. One is because that information was recorded on the booking of the session. It gives you one capability of confirming identity. So that's point number 1. Second is that if there is a medical emergency during the video group clinic session, you are clinically responsible for those patients during that period, and so therefore being able to know where they are accurately is really important. So asking and confirming those 2 bits of information in that partial sense during the beginning that have been offered up a bit beforehand, then of course that gives you the capability. People will move about, and we know that. And I think the thing is that if that is the case, then you may need to say we can confirm your location if you've moved via text, or perhaps you'd like to come back on another one. We can organise it again. But they are 2 fairly critical factors for you to collect and confirm. So
the other thing that's maybe just worth pointing out on that is that the person who will collect that and confirm that will be the facilitator. So from a time management point of view, by the time the clinician joins, that information is, it's all sorted. The clinician doesn't need to really, the clinician's like the the star of the show. They're kind of going to wander in and it's all been sorted already. So it's a technical facilitator who has to manage a lot of these information governance issues. The other thing is that's going to be important is that you need to check that you've got the people who said they were going to come, because you're going to share some clinical data on the results board. And if one of those patients is a DNA and doesn't come, you're going to need to remove their data from the results board before you show it. So it's there's a few little checks there that need to be sorted out so that that you're really, we've got the right data, we've got the right people in the room, great guys, we're all set to go. Yeah. And that's going to, if we manage that, and this is going to be partly the skill, I think, of what we need to explore in the training is doing that in a way that makes the patients feel safe and welcome and know that they are in a place where everybody is signed up to keeping each other safe. And I know, we've got Rupa on this call, and Rupa's described to me a really lovely way in which she manages that. And please keep the questions coming. But Rupa, I don't know if you want to come off mute and just say, because you have a lovely little sentence that you say around this that it might be useful to share with everybody, I think.
Hi Georgina. I can't remember what I said now. What did I say about?
It was something, oh gosh, so it was something like we need to make sure that you're all
this is a safe space for everyone where you can be honest and truthful, that kind of thing.
That's right.
So we want to create an atmosphere and where you feel comfortable sharing, and if everyone feels sharing, we'll all learn together. That kind of.
Perfect. So you see how different that feels from, I've got this information governance process and I have to go through it, and I have to, if we talk about the outcome of the process as opposed to the process itself, then we'll get patients quickly into that right space and they'll feel really as if they're being looked after by us, and we've addressed those information governance things. So it's like, we're to help us create a really, really safe space where you all feel able to share everything. We're just going to agree this, I'm going to run through this, we're just checking that all of you who are here are who we expect you to be, and so it's all about that, that the way we do it, isn't it, really? So we'll explore that in the training and make sure that your facilitators, because it is going to be often your facilitators who's going to do this, feel really confident about doing that well. Okay, have we got any other questions from anyone else? Have we covered it so comprehensively? We've managed to, I can't believe it. That's is that a good thing, everybody? Tell us in the chat, is that a good thing? Hopefully we've stuck by our principle, which we promised ourselves at the beginning of the programme, as we described, which is to keep it as simple as possible for you guys. Yeah, we don't want this to be overcomplicated. Hopefully, and I have to say, Jason has done the majority of the work on this. You know, we should be giving him a round of applause really for wading his way through all of the bureaucracy of all of this. But you know, it boils down to 2 or 3 small risks you have to manage, and we hopefully are going to give you the tools to manage those really, really safely. So hopefully this session is really kind of reinforced for you, as well as the emails that we could continue to send you on a weekly basis, updating you that, you know, when we're starting, we can really go for it. There's no holding back now. We want our Sentinels running weekly, bi-weekly, daily video group clinics. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear how it's impacting on you as clinicians. We want to hear how it's impacting on your patients. So thank you so much for attending, everybody, today. And we'll make sure you get the slides as a follow-up. And also, we have recorded this session, and we'll send you a recording so that you can also share that with other people within your team as well.
Great. No Thanks problem. Again, everybody.
Take care, everybody, and have a great day.